Hi, I'm Alex, 30, and last Friday my birthday somehow turned into the most awkward social experiment of my life. I woke up expecting a normal day, coffee, maybe a few messages trickling in. But by noon, I realized something weird. My phone hadn't buzzed once. No texts, no calls, not even a single happy birthday from my mom, who usually sends a voice note that sounds like she's narrating a rom-com. By 3 p.m., I was borderline panicking. I checked Instagram, thinking maybe people were waiting for the official post. So I snapped a photo of my sad little cupcake and posted. Celebrated 30th with amazing friends. Clicked share and braced myself. Within minutes, likes started trickling in, but the comments, or lack thereof, made me question my entire existence. One like from my cousin, who I'm convinced only uses Instagram to stalk my life, and that was it. I spent the next hour pacing my apartment, staring at the phone like it held the meaning of life. My brain kept running through possibilities. Maybe I had been unfriended by everyone in a digital coup? Maybe Facebook and Instagram had decided to erase all traces of me? Or maybe, in the most terrifying thought, people just forgot. By 6 p.m., I was officially panicking. I poured myself a drink, sat on the couch, and tried to rationalize it. Then I got a notification. My post had one comment. I clicked, expecting a joke or a late happy birthday. But it wasn't. It was a message from someone I barely knew in college saying, "Cool cupcake." It was then I realized I had just thrown a birthday party in full view of the world, with no one actually there. And yet, the absurdity of it hit me. I couldn't stop laughing, even as a sinking feeling settled in my stomach. I was alone, 30, and everyone else seemed to be conspiring against me, or maybe they just didn't care. Either way, I had no idea the chaos this little post was about to unleash. By 7 p.m., I had fully accepted my role as the tragically forgotten 30-year-old. I poured a second glass of wine, scrolling through the endless parade of everyone else's birthdays, brunches, and vacation posts like some twisted, colorful montage of social success. Then my phone buzzed. My heart leapt. Finally, someone remembered me. Except it wasn't a friend. It was a notification from a local news page. Viral birthday fiasco? Man turns 30 alone, posts online. I blinked. Wait, what? I clicked. There it was, my cupcake photo, my sad little caption, framed with a headline that made me sound like a human cautionary tale. And in the comments, people were debating whether I was the loneliest person alive, giving advice, and laughing. A lot. Like global-level laughing. Panic set in. My first instinct was to delete the post, but my thumbs froze. Something inside me whispered, let it ride. So I poured a third glass of wine and sat back, watching my phone light up like a Christmas tree. Strangers were tagging their friends, tweeting memes, even a few local comedians had shared it with punchlines about the most tragic 30th ever. Then the DMs started. One after another, some from random people, some from, wait, was that my boss? A few were genuinely sweet, a few suspiciously flirtatious, and one was from a number I didn't recognize, just 3 words. Need to talk. I stared at the message for what felt like an eternity. My night had gone from lonely isolation to something else entirely. Something unpredictable. Something that smelled dangerously like adventure, or disaster. I didn't know whether to be terrified or thrilled, but either way, my 30th birthday had officially stopped being boring. By 9 p.m., the messages had become a flood I couldn't ignore. The mysterious need to talk number had sent a second message. It's urgent. Meet me now. My logical brain screamed, do not go meet a stranger at night. But my gut? That mischievous little devil whispered, you've been forgotten all day. Why not add some danger for flavor? I grabbed my jacket, debated whether I should grab my phone charger or a baseball bat, and stepped into the night. The streets were quiet, eerily so, except for the occasional sound of someone laughing too loudly in a bar across the street. My phone buzzed again. Outside the cafe on Main. Don't freak out. I walked faster, my pulse hammering like a drum solo. And then I saw him, a figure standing under the cafe's flickering neon sign. As I approached, the figure stepped into the light, and I froze. It wasn't a stranger. It was Ryan, my college roommate who had vanished off the grid 10 years ago, the guy who once borrowed my favorite hoodie and never returned it. He looked different. Older, sure, but there was a wild glint in his eyes, the kind you only see in people who've been on way too many spontaneous road trips. Before I could even say, "Ryan?" he held up a finger. "Not here. Follow me." And just like that, my quiet, lonely birthday had flipped into something that felt like a spy movie, or a very bad decision. My wine-fueled imagination was racing. Was this a prank? A reunion? Or was I about to be part of the worst headline yet? I took a deep breath, trying to steady the mix of fear and adrenaline bubbling in my chest. Whatever was coming next, there was no turning back. And somewhere in the back of my mind, a tiny, reckless part of me thought, maybe this was exactly the adventure I needed. Ryan led me down a series of back alleys I didn't even know existed, weaving through shadows like he had a personal GPS etched into his brain. I kept asking questions, but he just smirked and shook his head. "Later," he said. "Trust me, you're going to want to see this." My curiosity battled with sheer panic. Was I signing up for a harmless prank, or something that would land me on a true crime podcast? Finally, we arrived at a building that looked like it hadn't seen a paintbrush since the 80s. The neon sign outside flickered faintly. Club Midnight. He pushed the door open, and the smell hit me immediately: cigarette smoke, spilled beer, and the faint tang of something metallic. Inside, it was buzzing. Not with people my age, but older, eccentric types, laughing like they held every secret in the world. Jazz music thumped low, but not in a classy lounge way. It was more like it had been stolen from a 1920s speakeasy and dropped into 2025. And then I saw it, a massive projector screen showing my Instagram posts, scrolling slowly with every comment and like I'd gotten that day. People were pointing, whispering, some cheering. One woman raised her glass and said, "The loneliest 30-year-old finally gets noticed." I froze. My birthday humiliation had turned into some kind of cult celebration. Ryan clapped me on the shoulder. "Welcome," he said, his grin impossibly wide. "You're the star tonight." I wanted to laugh, cry, or scream, but mostly I just stood there, blinking. Somewhere between embarrassment and disbelief, I realized I was the only person in the room who had no idea what was about to happen next. Ryan grabbed my arm and pulled me toward a table at the center of the chaos. On it were dozens of little cupcakes. My cupcake had inspired an entire weird, shadowy bakery tribute. Around the table, people were holding up tiny cards with 30 written on them in gold glitter, chanting in some bizarre rhythm that made no sense and somehow gave me goosebumps. I couldn't tell if it was a birthday ritual or an underground sorcery meeting. Then someone handed me a microphone. My instinct was to run, but before I could, Ryan leaned in and whispered, "Just go with it. You're about to change your life." I cleared my throat, tried to joke about the absurdity of my situation, and immediately realized the microphone had a feedback squeal that sounded like a banshee. The crowd laughed, not meanly, but like they were in on a secret I wasn't. They began throwing questions at me. "Why did you post alone? Was it really just cupcakes? Do you fear turning 30? Each answer I gave, clumsily and with more honesty than I'd intended, was met with cheers. The more I confessed, the louder the applause got. And then Ryan winked at me, whispering, "Now comes the fun part." At that moment, a side door opened, and a group of people wheeled in a massive, glittering cake shaped, horribly, hilariously, like my apartment building. The crowd roared as I realized the absurdity. My lonely birthday had been transformed into this theatrical spectacle. My humiliation had mutated into something almost epic. But as I leaned in to blow out the candles, I noticed a shadow in the corner, watching me intently. Someone familiar, someone I hadn't seen in years, and my stomach dropped. This wasn't just a party. Something was about to get real. The shadow moved closer, and my breath caught. It was Sophie, my ex from college, the one who had ghosted me right after graduation and then disappeared without a trace. She was leaning against the wall, arms crossed, that same infuriating smirk on her face. My mind immediately spun into panic mode. Why is she here? Is she judging me? Did Ryan plan this? Before I could even formulate a thought, Ryan nudged me. Go talk to her. It's part of the night, he said, dead serious. My stomach flipped. I hadn't seen Sophie in over a decade, and the last time we spoke, I was certain she hated my guts. I walked toward her, each step feeling like I was entering a gladiator arena, and she finally spoke. You really did it, she said, voice teasing. You turned being ignored into a spectacle. I blinked. Thanks? I think? She laughed softly, but there was something in her eyes, a spark I hadn't seen in years. I had to see it for myself, she admitted. And, well, I might have underestimated you. Before I could respond, she leaned closer and whispered, but be honest, did you plan this, or did chaos just follow you? I paused. That's when it hit me, this whole night, from the viral post to Ryan's weird underground cult party, it wasn't just random. Somehow, my life had spun out of control in the most spectacularly absurd way imaginable. And now, the one person I'd hoped I'd never bump into again was standing here, fully intrigued by the mess I'd made. Then Ryan clapped his hands, breaking the moment. Enough sappy reunions! Time for the challenge. Challenge? My brain raced. I had survived embarrassment, strangers, and even a minor public spectacle, but now it seemed like the night wasn't done testing me. Whatever came next, I knew this was going to be unforgettable. Ryan led me to a corner of the club where a small stage had been set up, dimly lit and almost theatrical. On it were 3 mysterious boxes, each labeled with cryptic words: truth, dare, and chaos. My pulse quickened. I'd done enough embarrassing stuff today. Could I really handle another round? Pick one, Ryan said, grinning like he knew a secret I didn't. I hesitated, and Sophie leaned in, whispering, Go for chaos. It's the fun one. I swallowed hard, took a deep breath, and lifted the lid on chaos. Inside was a single envelope. I tore it open, and the words inside made my jaw drop. Find the person who ignored you today and make them regret it. My heart sank. That's me? My entire birthday had been a social media ghost town, and now I had to confront it directly? Before I could process, Ryan clapped me on the back. Consider it experiential growth. I spent the next 10 minutes navigating the crowd, trying to identify the people who had snubbed my birthday. Some were strangers, some people I vaguely knew. When I finally cornered one of them, instead of confrontation, I found myself laughing uncontrollably at the absurdity of the situation. I realized something important: the humiliation, the viral post, the weird underground club, it didn't matter anymore. The world could ignore me, laugh at me, even turn me into a meme, and I'd still survive. Hell, maybe I'd even enjoy it. By the end of the night, I had made friends, enemies, in a playful, theatrical sense, and somehow, miraculously, Sophie and I were laughing together at the chaos of it all. The loneliness that had started my birthday was nowhere in sight. But just as I began to feel like I had mastered the madness, Ryan nudged me toward the door and whispered, Last surprise, and it's big. I braced myself. Whatever was next, I knew this night still had one final twist waiting. Ryan pushed open a back door, and I stepped into a completely different scene. Outside, the alley opened into a rooftop bathed in city lights, with music pulsing faintly from below. And there they were, all the people who had ignored me that day, lined up like they'd been waiting for me all along. Not in judgment, but in celebration. Confused, I looked at Ryan. He grinned. Turns out, he said, they weren't ignoring you. They were part of the plan. What plan? I asked, laughing nervously. Ryan waved at the crowd. The whole viral post, the underground party, the chaos, it was orchestrated. To make your 30th unforgettable. To show you that even when it feels like the world forgets you, people notice in ways you'd never expect. I felt my jaw drop. The people I had assumed had forgotten me, the ones I thought didn't care, they were all here, cheering, raising glasses, laughing, even holding signs that said, "Welcome to 30, Alex." Sophie stepped forward, smiling that same mischievous grin, and handed me a champagne flute. The city stretched out below us, glittering like a reminder that life could be messy, wild, and ridiculously unpredictable, and somehow, that made it beautiful. I laughed until my sides hurt, raised my glass, and realized that the loneliness I had felt earlier that day wasn't real. It had been a setup for something bigger, a night that reminded me how much chaos, friendship, and unexpected twists could fit into a single birthday. As the music swelled and the city lights reflected in Sophie's eyes, I finally understood that this 30th birthday, my seemingly forgotten birthday, was exactly what I needed. And for the first time that day, I felt completely, unapologetically, alive. Just when I thought the night had reached its peak, Ryan nudged me toward the edge of the rooftop. "One last thing," he said with that infuriating grin of his. I looked down, and nearly lost my mind. A massive billboard on the building across the street had lit up with my face, my cupcake, and the words, "The birthday everyone forgot, but we didn't." People on the streets below were pointing, laughing, taking photos. Car horns honked. A group of tourists even stopped to take selfies with it. I could feel my cheeks burning hotter than the city lights. Sophie leaned into me, whispering, "Congratulations, you're famous now." Before I could even protest, Ryan handed me a microphone again. "Do your speech. Own it." And somehow, with the city sprawling below, my friends cheering behind me, and Sophie smirking beside me, I did. I made jokes, I admitted my ridiculousness, I toasted to chaos, loneliness, and unexpected adventures. And the crowd, they roared. As the night wind whipped around us, I realized something vital. My birthday had been a mess, but the mess had turned into magic. People had noticed me, truly noticed me, not just online, not just in passing. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like my 30 years of life, awkwardness, and absurdity had finally mattered. That night, staring at the glittering city and the billboard that mocked and celebrated me all at once, I laughed harder than I had in years. Somehow, my forgotten birthday had become unforgettable. The next morning, I woke up to a phone that had clearly exploded overnight. Notifications were pouring in from people I hadn't spoken to in years, local news outlets, and even a few minor celebrities tagging me with, "The loneliest 30th? Not anymore!" I groaned, realizing that my quiet, miserable birthday had officially gone global. Sophie was still in town, texting me, "Meet me for coffee. We need to debrief the chaos." I agreed, knowing full well we'd end up laughing until we cried. When we met, she handed me a small envelope. Inside was a note from Ryan. "Consider this the start of the next adventure. Keep your phone charged." By mid-afternoon, the city had essentially turned my birthday into a minor festival. Random strangers stopped me on the street to say, "You're the cupcake guy, right?" And one barista even gave me a free latte with a tiny candle in it. I laughed so hard I nearly spilled it. But amidst the absurdity, I realized something important. My lonely birthday had taught me more than I ever expected. It taught me that humiliation could turn into joy, that chaos could turn into connection, and that the people who mattered would show up in ways I never anticipated. And for the first time in a long time, I felt fully seen, messy, viral, and alive, all at once. By nightfall, as I finally sat down on my couch, exhausted and buzzing from the day, I smiled at the memory of that cupcake, the rooftop, Sophie's grin, and the chaos Ryan had orchestrated. My 30th birthday wasn't just unforgettable, it had changed me. And somehow, I knew, this was only the beginning. The morning after the rooftop madness, reality hit like a freight train. My apartment looked the same, but everything else had shifted. My phone was still buzzing relentlessly, with notifications from strangers tagging me in memes, local news outlets sending interview requests, and even a few companies offering sponsorships for, apparently, birthday chaos content. I sat there, half awed, half panicked, sipping coffee and trying to process that a single cupcake post had blown up my life in ways I didn't think possible. Then Sophie popped in. Apparently she had taken it upon herself to become my personal crisis manager. "We need a plan," she said, tossing me a notebook full of scribbled ideas, media appearances, charity tie-ins, even a small pop-up event celebrating forgotten birthdays. I laughed, realizing my life had turned into a mix of absurd comedy and unexpected opportunity. For the first time, being ignored had actually propelled me forward instead of crushing me. Ryan, of course, was already 5 steps ahead, texting me, "Don't overthink it. Just lean into it. Tomorrow, you headline a surprise party." Somewhere in the whirlwind of chaos, I finally understood something crucial. Sometimes, being forgotten isn't the worst thing that can happen. Sometimes, it's the universe's very messy, but spectacular, way of pushing you into a story worth telling. And as I stared out the window at the city still glowing from last night's chaos, I smiled. 30 was already shaping up to be the wildest, most unpredictable decade of my life. By mid-afternoon, the chaos had taken on a life of its own. My phone buzzed incessantly, and I realized people were actually planning a forgotten birthday festival. In my honor, yes, a literal festival. Ryan had somehow organized it overnight, with local musicians, a food truck selling cupcakes, and even a flash mob practicing a choreography based on my viral post. Sophie laughed as she handed me a clipboard. "Welcome to your new life, Jamie. You're officially a phenomenon." I wandered through the preparations in disbelief. Neighbors I hadn't spoken to in years waved. Random strangers stopped to take photos. One kid even shouted, "You're the hero of lonely birthdays." I laughed until my stomach hurt. Somewhere between the absurdity and sheer adrenaline, I felt a strange pride. My life had spiraled into complete chaos, but it was my chaos now. Then Ryan appeared, looking impossibly smug. "The world's watching," he said. "Your story isn't over. It's just evolving." And that's when it hit me. I didn't have to fear being ignored anymore. Even if people forgot me, even if social media laughed at me, the memory of this absurd, messy, joyful birthday, and the connections I'd made, would always be mine. As I raised a cupcake in mock salute to the growing crowd, I realized that being forgotten had never felt more unforgettable. As the Forgotten Birthday Festival kicked into gear, I realized the chaos had become oddly comforting. Strangers were dancing to the flash mob music Ryan had arranged, cupcakes were flying through the air, and Sophie was coordinating interviews with anyone who would listen. It was completely insane, but in the best possible way. At one point, a local news crew approached me. "So, Jamie," the reporter asked, "how does it feel to go from lonely birthday to viral sensation overnight?" I blinked, realizing that the universe had somehow turned my humiliation into a story people wanted to celebrate. I laughed, shrugged, and said, "Honestly? It's terrifying, exhilarating, and deliciously ridiculous all at once." Ryan nudged me. "See? This is the moment you own." I took a deep breath, looked out at the crowd, and let myself fully soak it in. For the first time, I didn't feel forgotten, or small, or awkward. I felt massive, alive, and completely unstoppable. Sophie came up beside me, grinning. "So, what's next?" she asked. I smiled, realizing that for the first time, I didn't have to plan everything. The chaos had a rhythm of its own, and I was finally ready to dance along. And somewhere in the back of my mind, I knew that the story wasn't over. It was just beginning. By the time the sun began to rise, the Forgotten Birthday Festival had wound down, leaving a city street littered with confetti, cupcake wrappers, and the faint hum of exhausted laughter. I stood on the curb, sipping the last of my coffee, watching the people drift away, smiling and waving. Somehow, my lonely, invisible birthday had transformed into a chaotic, unforgettable adventure that no one, including me, could have predicted. Sophie nudged me gently. "You survived, didn't you?" she said, grinning. "I did," I admitted, feeling the weight of everything I'd learned, that humiliation could turn into joy, that loneliness could transform into connection, and that chaos, when embraced, could lead to the most extraordinary experiences of your life. Ryan appeared beside us, holding a single leftover cupcake. "One for the road," he said. "Because every story deserves a proper ending." I laughed, took it, and bit in. Sweet, messy, and perfectly imperfect, just like my 30th birthday. And in that moment, standing there with the city waking up around me, I realized that being forgotten wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a story I would tell forever. I smiled, looking at Sophie and Ryan, and thought maybe this was exactly the kind of chaos I needed to start the next chapter of my life. The world hadn't forgotten me. I had just been waiting for the right moment to be remembered.